of what is card fraud. So card fraud, this is the fraudulent use of someone's physical card or card information to perform unauthorized transaction. So the physical card is in the card present space where fraudsters will copy or clone a customer's card and then go to your brick and mortar location to conduct the fraudulent transaction. The card information is normally used over the e-commerce platform to conduct fraudulent transactions. Card skimming / cloning is a type of fraud in which information on the credit or debit card is usually copied when the user makes a genuine purchase. So if you go to a gas station or a restaurant, the collusive employee will seek the opportunity to copy your card information. The credit card industry, which is regulated by the Payment Association, is primarily regulated by Visa and MasterCard. However, you have Amex and Discover in the mix as well. With the influence of technology, it has become more difficult to manage fraud. However, seminars like these provide us with great opportunity to assist our merchant in mitigating fraud. Merchants have a very significant role to play in mitigating fraudulent activities, as there are severe consequences for non-compliance. The prevalence of card fraud in Jamaica is taking place because cards are being skimmed at the point of sale or at the ABM. The replication of debit and credit cards at merchant location, and previous speaker mentioned data breaches and hacking, which is a global phenomenon affecting our e-commerce merchants today. It's also prevalent because cards are intercepted in the mail. Financial institutions mail out their credit cards, and fraudsters will intercept those at the central sorting office and then fraudulently activate them and use them. We also have fraudulent refund. This occurs when a merchant point-of-sale terminal is used to apply a refund with no original transaction is listed. However, we at NCB has recently rolled out a process which we refer to as verified refund, which minimizes these fraudulent activities. So, if a transaction does not have an originating transaction, a merchant cannot process a refund on them. Card skimming. Some of the most prevalent way that cards are being skimmed today is at the ABM, point of sale, and our merchant location. However, I want you today to move away from the ABM for a little bit and focus on the point of sale. So fraudsters are stealing point of sales and retrofitting them and turning them into skimmer. So it is very important for our merchant to ensure that our terminals are secure. So terminal security is now top of mind. And the handheld skimmer, which fraudsters would give to a collusive employee, which persons refer to as a grabber as well, is also another device that we must be aware of. So card cloning occurs when fraudsters use detail acquired through skimming activity to replicate the card for the purpose of committing a fraud. So these are some of the devices which fraudsters use to commit their fraudulent activity. As you will see the hologram, that is one of the features of the credit cards that the fraudsters to date has not been able to replicate along with the chip. And you see the handheld skimmer, some of the fraudulent cards that they utilize as well. Now, merchant fraud. So fraud associated with this category normally occurs when a merchant or their employee commit fraud using cardholders' information. NCB has put several measures in place to mitigate these fraudulent activities. What we have done, we conduct our due diligence, which is risk assessment, both before onboarding merchants and after onboarding the merchant. That process continues. We also have a rigorous deposit monitoring process where we monitor our merchant activities to look for suspicious activities on a daily basis. Trainings like these provide us with great opportunities to provide best practices to our merchant to ensure that they keep themselves and our customers safe. We also conduct several investigations at our merchant location when fraudulent activities occur, whether to exonerate the merchant themselves, because sometimes the merchants are victim, their employees collude at times, or if the merchant are collusive, we proceed accordingly. Now, some of the most prevalent locations where fraud occur: gas stations, hardware store, cell phone and retail store, utility companies, supermarket, jewelry store. So whilst this list is not exhausted, if you are in any line of business that is mentioned here, you should be on high alert for fraudulent activities, especially as we approach the Christmas season, where persons refer to as the silly season. These are locations where fraudsters love to monetize. Gas stations and pump attendant is one of their favorite spots. I refer to it as their sweet spot, where they go and they collude with the pump attendant to copy customers' cards. Now, we have several programs that are available, both local and international, and some of them are driven by the Payment Association that we implement to ensure that merchants are in line with best practices. So one is referred to as the Excessive Chargeback Program, and that program comes into play when customers dispute charges that taken place at a merchant location for one reason or another. So excessive chargeback does not necessarily mean fraud, because it could mean that a customer went to a location and they didn't get the goods as issued, the goods was inferior, or they were double charged or stuff like that. So if we have a lot of dispute coming in from our merchants, we put them on a program which we refer to as the Excessive Chargeback Program. We also have the Fraud to Sales Ratio Program, where internally, and the Payment Association as well as giving us guidelines as to how to monitor our merchants' activities to ensure that whilst we want to keep fraud to zero, we understand that sometimes the unfortunate incident might occur and one or two frauds might slip through. So we just ensure that we maintain a critical balance between the customer experience and the security to keep fraud at minimal. There's also the Global Merchant Audit Program, and this program is after you have breached the Excessive Chargeback Program, the Excessive Fraud to Sales Ratio, then you put you on the Global Merchant Audit Program to ensure that we put a program in place to reduce the chargebacks and to reduce the fraud to sales ratio. The Merchant Registration Program is a program implemented by the Payment Association, which issuer is mandated to register all merchants that they do business with. The Merchant Alert to Control Iris Merchant Match, we refer to that as a blacklist. So if merchant is terminated for any reason that a financial institution terminates a merchant, they must enter the information on this list. We also have the Business Risk Assessment and Mitigation Program, and this is where the Payment Association now monitors activities to ensure that merchants aren't involved in counterfeit goods, selling of drugs, breaching copyrights and stuff like that. And Payment Card Industry Data Security, PCI DSS, all this really means is that you should not store customer sensitive information and stuff like that. But our presenters, our presenter later will provide more information on that. PIN security, which is very important as well, because shoulder surfing is real, and you have to ensure that they give our customers privacy when conducting transaction at the point of sale. Now, we are moving away from card, magstripe card, and everybody now is issuing chip cards. We at NCB has rolled out our EMV chip cards right across all our products. We are now rolling out our Visa debit cards, and EMV really stands for Europay, MasterCard, and Visa. It's a very secure way of conducting transactions. Actually, it is the preferred way if you ask me. I push two ways I recommend to the customers to do their transaction. Either you utilize a chip or you utilize the contactless option, that is if the card is contactless, because fraudsters have not been able to replicate the chip. In all the data and research that we have done globally, we have not seen in any case where fraudsters have been able to conduct a duplicate chip. So it is the most preferred and more secure way to conduct your transaction. So this makes the transaction more secure, and it reduces the risk of fraud, as chip is tamper-proof. How do you process a chip transaction? So you insert the card in the terminal with the chip facing up. You leave the card in the terminal for the duration of the transaction. Some banks do chip and signature, some banks do chip and pin. So whatever the instruction of the terminal say, follow what that says. We at NCB, we go chip and pin because we feel that is the more secure way to conduct the transaction. Now, contactless payment. I know a lot of persons are a little bit weary about our contactless feature because of security concern. But it is the most convenient and secure way to conduct your transaction. These payment methods give buyer the convenience of making payment without swiping or inserting a payment card at a point of sale. The customer will tap their contactless enabled payment device into a contactless enabled reader. Embedded in a contactless card is a computer chip that stores, processes the payment, account data, and connect antenna that runs around the perimeter of the card. Now, how does a contactless transaction occur? For low-value transaction, depending on the risk appetite of the financial institution that issued the card, customers can tap and go without entering their PIN or signing the sales slip for a low value. Or, depending on the threshold that the financial institution set, customers might be required to enter a PIN or sign. Now, there are three forms of conducted transactions. We have the mag stripe, we have the chip, and we have tap and go. So I will now go through the cardholder acceptance procedure and identify the security features on a credit card if we are doing a mag stripe transaction. So one, hold the card throughout the life of the transaction, and this is to prevent card switching. Fraudsters love to go to supermarkets, restaurants, and stuff like that, purchase a lot of things, give the cashier the card, they will examine the card for the security feature, and then they'll just abruptly change their mind and say, oh, I'm not interested in doing this transaction anymore, because that card, the features on it is good, but it has no funds, and then they'll just slip a counterfeit card after you are distracted and just interested in processing the transaction. Review all the standard security features of the card, which I'll go through shortly. Obtain authorization for all transactions, and compare signature on the card with that on the sales slip. So the signature that is on the back of the card with that on the sales slip. That is what places a customer at your place of business, and not an ID, which a lot of merchants rely on today. And the card is not valid unless it is signed. So what are some of the security features that we should look for on the credit card? So let's start with Visa. So Visa, first, all Visa credit cards start with 4. So it has 16 digits, evenly distributed in blocks of 4. You should also look for the hologram on the card. It has a flying dove. The hologram can either be on the front of the card or on the back of the card, depending on which financial institution issues the credit card. The hologram can either be on the front or on the back. You should also look for the expiry date. The expiry date on the card should be futuristic. So we are now in 2021. We should be processing credit cards only with 2021 or 2022, 2023, 2024. No 2020, no 2019 credit card should be processed. That card is expired. You should also check the signature panel on the credit card. If the signature panel on the credit card is tampered, the word void will appear. So for example, if my credit card was lost or stolen, and I signed the back of the card and the fraudsters have difficulty with replicating my signature, what they'll tend to do is try to erase the signature. But if they do that, the word void will appear on the credit card. The Visa, if you put the Visa brand, also must appear in blue and gold. Normally at the bottom, front of the card, and if you put it under the UV lamp, the word V will illuminate in the sign. You should also check the CVV2 that is on the back of the card, just to ensure that all is well with the credit card. MasterCard now, all the features on the Visa is on the MasterCard as well, except that the Visa starts with 5, it has 12 digits, evenly distributed. It has 16 digits, sorry, evenly distributed in blocks of 4 on the front of the card. MasterCard has the interlocking globe, and Visa of the flying dove as their hologram area. The interlocking globe for the MasterCard could also be on the signature panel as well. So you check the expiry date, you check the cardholder name, and all the security features. One of the most prevalent security features that I love to recommend to our merchants is to do a little fingernail test. You scratch the hologram just to ensure that it is not lifted and is not one that was purchased on the internet, because the hologram along with the chip are two of the security features that the fraudsters have not been able to replicate despite their efforts. Now, completing a sale, what are some of the things that you should do? Ensure that you examine the card for the security features. Have the cardholder sign the sales slip. Compare the signature on the card to that on the draft. If the two does not match, return the card If the two match, return the card with a copy of the draft. If they don't match, ask for additional information such as a driver's license or a passport. And there are 2 times with which ID comes into play. So I know that a lot of times when you go to a place of business, the first thing that persons ask for when you're completing a sale, once you give them your credit card, is your ID. And ID does not form a part of the cardholder acceptance procedure. The only time that a customer is required to provide an ID is, 1, is if they sign and it does not match, then you ask them for a driver's license or a government-issued ID to verify the signature. Or if the card is not signed, then you ask the customer to produce a government-issued identification card, ask them to sign the credit card in your presence, and then check the signature on the ID if it matches the signature on the back of the card. Those are the only time that ID comes into play. If you're processing a chip transaction now, it's a little bit different. So the first thing you do when processing a chip transaction is that you check the card to ensure that it has a chip. Select the currency, whether it is US or Jamaican, enter the amount, customer then insert the card into the terminal with the chip facing upward. So this time around now, the customer is in control. When you're processing a magstripe transaction, the merchant is in charge. You keep the card throughout the life of the transaction to prevent card switching. But once you are processing a chip transaction, or once you get an approval on a chip, whether it is chip and signature or chip and pin, once the chip provides an authorization, then the customer is good to go. So you leave the card in the terminal and follow the instruction on the screen. So if you get an approval, you proceed. If it says decline, you act accordingly. If you get a code 10, which I'll explain a little bit later, or it's a old card, you proceed accordingly. And once you get an approval, then you remove the card, print the receipt, and complete the transaction. Now, the sales slip also provides us with a secondary type of validation to ensure that the card is genuine. So it has the merchant information, it has the cardholder name, and it has the last 4 digits of the credit card on it. So you check the signature on the sales slip with that on the back of the card. The last 4 digits of the credit card as well is normally printed on the credit card. Because if a fraudster skim a customer card, they don't necessarily have to change the full 16 digit on the face of the card, because only the last 4 digits is really important. Because whilst you're processing your transaction at your place of business, you only enter the last 4 digits on the terminal in order to authenticate the credit card. So what fraudsters will do from time to time, they will put a Visa card and a MasterCard plastic, or they will just press out the last 4 digits of the credit card. So examine the last 4 digits as well, and ensure that the last 4 digits is what is on the sales slip, is also on the face of the credit card. And this is an example of a sales slip that was processed with a counterfeit card. So if you look on the sales slip, it actually have the first name, then the last name. Normally, it has the last name, then the first name. Now, potential authorization response. Whatever the terminals provide, follow the instruction. If you get an approval, proceed accordingly. Decline if it says call or call center or pick up card or hold card, proceed accordingly, but do not endanger yourself. So I want to walk you through now obtaining authorization by utilizing Code 10. What is Code 10? Code 10 is a universal code that provides merchants with a way to alert the authorization center that a suspicious transaction is occurring. The Code 10 operator, normally, for example, at NCB customer care agent, they will ask a series of questions that the merchant can answer only via yes or no. Because once you say Code 10, they know that something is going awry, and they don't know if the cardholder or the fraudster is beside you. However, if the person gets boisterous whilst you're trying to get through to the call center to proceed with a Code 10 call, do not endanger yourself. If they ask for the credit card, give it back to them. Then you proceed to call us and notify us, or call your security team to ensure that you are protected. Now, some of the no-nos that a lot of merchants tend to do, which are actually breaches of the merchant agreement. So assigning minimum and maximum purchase amount. if a customer come to your place of business to purchase ice cement, and the ice cement is for $1 or $3, and wishes to utilize their credit or debit card, they should be allowed to do so, because assigning minimum and maximum purchases are breaches of the merchant agreement. Adding a surcharge or a fee for using your credit card is also a breach of the merchant agreement. So from time to time, merchants love to add a 2 or 3% to customers' balance if they attempt to use their debit or credit card. That is a no-no. Restricting bank card use for a discounted item. So for example, if you're having a sale and the discounted items can only be sold via cash, what you should do is include the markup, if you so desire, in the discounted price, but you should not discriminate between cash and card sale. Asking cardholders to provide additional information such as phone number, address, social security number, or driver's license is also a breach of the merchant agreement. Now, I want to walk you through refund management. What is refund fraud? Criminals normally obtain POS or point-of-sale devices from the theft of an active POS terminal, or they will collude with a merchant employee to apply a refund with no original sales was recorded. However, we at NCB, we just recently, over the last year or so, launched a new process which we refer to as verified refund. There must be an original sale in order for a refund to be conducted on NCB terminals. However, notwithstanding that, I will still pass on some best practices for you to still keep in mind, even though we do have that process in place. So develop a clearly displayed refund and return policy. Ensure that refunds are made to the same card as the originating purchase. The original card and account holder must be physically present for a refund to be issued once the sale takes place with the physical card. So if you are in your brick and mortar space, if it takes place on the e-commerce platform, then that process will follow as is. So it must go back to the original card. And no cash refund should be made when a credit card was used for the original purchase. Terminal security now is very important. It has become top of mind for us because fraudsters are stealing point of sale and retrofitting them and turning them into skimmers. So we want the merchant to ensure that they have a terminal management or a terminal security protocol in place to ensure that they keep the terminal safe. Similarly to how you would ensure that you put a protocol around your cash register, the terminal could be considered your cash register, so you should ensure that they are secure. So some of the best practices that you should do to ensure that your terminals are secure is: 1, anchor the device so that it's not easily removed. So from time to time, you'll go to a place of business and you'll just see the terminals lying around. Ensure that they are secure. So look out for hidden cameras, that no hidden cameras or devices are hovered over the terminals to capture the customer's PIN. Implement CCTV footage in your place of business also to ensure that you can monitor the activities and the movement of the terminals, and also ensure that these are retained for at least 90 days. And do daily checks to ensure that the terminals are safeguarded. Train your staff members how to identify signs of terminal tampering to be sure that they know what to do and they are not easily lured into participated into these fraudulent activities. So one of the things that I'll encourage merchants to do as well, if you can put a little secret sign on your terminal so that you can easily identify them and conduct quick snap checks on a daily basis to ensure that no new terminal was introduced into your space. Because one of the most prevalent ways that fraudsters are copying customers' debit and credit card information now is they will go to a place of business, they will lure a cashier into taking one of the fake point of sale. How that fraud works is that they'll give you the fake terminal first, they'll swipe it or enter your card and PIN, and then they'll tell you this terminal is not working, and then they'll give you the genuine terminal that was issued by the business. So you have to put terminal security in place to ensure that at all times, you can account for the movement of the terminal and conduct frequent snap checks throughout the course of the day to ensure that no new terminal was introduced into your place of business. Now, be on the lookout for simple anomalies such as a missing screw or seal, extra wirings or holes in these terminals. Routinely inspect the point of sale terminals. Secure the terminals to prevent removal of the device. Use an internal asset tracking procedures to identify your terminal very quickly. So if you have multiple terminals, you need to find a way to ensure either you'll write the serial number down or you will put a little device or a little sign on them that is not easily noticed by your employee or fraudster, so that you can quickly identify when a new terminal is introduced into your space. Only allow authorized personnel. So don't just let anyone walk into your business to say that they are coming from the service provider to service your terminal. Check with your merchant representative if you are in doubt, and ensure that all your Wi-Fi and internet connections are secured. Now, in wrapping up, preventing fraud at your place of business is an important task. There has been an increase in fraudulent activities as a result of technology advancement in the environment. However, the best way of attaining zero fraud level is to adopt some of the recommendation or all that was presented earlier in order to ensure that fraud is minimized. If in doubt, make contact with your merchant representative or NCB customer care at 1-888-622-3477 or call us at NCB Fraud Prevention Unit at 733-1148, or you can reach us by email at fraudpreventionunit@jncb.com. Let us partner in our fraud prevention efforts. Thank you.
Wow, wow. I must say, Dane, I learned so much just now from your presentation. First of all, I didn't realize that actually saying that you had to pay a minimum amount to use the card was not a part of the merchant agreement, because I've seen that so often. So, you know, thanks so much for sharing these little insights that we wouldn't typically know, you know.
So it is one of the misconceptions that I'm not sure where it came from. If you notice, when you travel overseas, no matter the value of the item, you can swipe and pay for your goods. But in Jamaica, you realize that a lot of merchants have signed for a debit card or a credit card transaction $500 or more. So that is a breach. If you notice any of those, call us and advise us, and we'll reach out to the merchant and ask them to remove the sign, because it is a breach of the merchant agreement.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I do have a couple of questions for you. First one is, one of the things that I realized when checking out at a store, the cashier may sometimes ask for ID or take note of my ID number. And you did mention something about IDs. Do I still need to present my ID or signature upon payment? Is this correct?
All right. So the ID does not form a part of the card acceptance procedure, any at all. That is a misconception that has allowed to mushroom in Jamaica over the years. So what places a customer at a place of business is not an ID. It is either the signature, which is on the back of the card, which the merchant now must compare with that on the sales slip, or if it is a chip and pin card, it is the pin which places the customer at the place of business. An ID does not come into play in that. The only time an ID comes into play is if the card is not signed, or if the signature does not match. That's the only time a merchant is required to ask a customer for an ID.
Okay, okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. How can I minimize my exposure to fraud?
So, education is key. Knowing what's happening in the space is very important, because despite our best effort, we will not be able to eliminate fraud. So all we have to do is to ensure that we know the best practices, know how fraudsters copy your card, protect your PIN whilst you're out there doing your transaction, ensure that the merchant adhering to the PCI DSS standard, they are not storing too much sensitive information, so that it does not provide too much opportunities for fraudsters to garner the information. So those are some of the ways that customer education is key. And in this instance, customer means the merchant and the consumers themselves. You have to know the best practices in order to minimize your exposure.
Okay, and one final question for you before we move to our next presenter. What should I do if I suspect a customer's card is fraudulent as a merchant? You know, what should I do if I suspect a customer's card is fraudulent or is being used fraudulently? Because I did note that you said, you know, don't endanger yourself. So what should we do? Remind us.
Yeah, so I made mention earlier of the Cont'd procedure, which is a universal approach used by all financial institutions right around the world. So if you are in the process of processing a transaction, and for whatever reason you suspect that the transaction is fraudulent, you seek to delay the transaction and call the financial institution, or you can refuse to process the transaction. That is how no sale is better than a bad sale. So if you suspect that the transaction is fraudulent and you are unable to reach the financial institution, refuse to process the transaction.
Right. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Dane. I really learned a lot, and I'm sure that our merchants who are tuning in also picked up quite a few things in that conversation. One of the things that Dane shared with us was around the different types of security measures in place on NCB's cards. And one of those measures was contactless security. And that is even more important now with all the pandemic things that are still happening. Pandemic party is still a thing. And so as technology evolves, the routine of picking out something to purchase, dipping in your wallet or purse to grab your credit card, swiping or inserting your credit card, entering your PIN, and so many iterative steps are getting less and less standard. With the introduction of contactless cards, purchases are becoming much more convenient. I must say that I'm a fan of the contactless, right? Tap and go. Love it. Now, however, as with all new technologies, some individuals may be averse to this change or even question the security of these features. Here to provide insights on contactless security is Tony Spence, Manager of Business Development for MasterCard Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago. Hi, Tony.
Hi, Stacy. Hello, NCB merchants. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Now, Tony is the Manager of Business Development for MasterCard Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago. She's responsible for building a pipeline of business opportunities with non-traditional financial players, including fintechs and merchants. She's also the divisional lead for acceptance, where she works to expand acceptance in underdeveloped or cash-only segments by engaging acquirers and introducing new acceptance technology. Prior to joining MasterCard, she worked with Grace Kennedy for several years, with her last role being head of corporate strategy and planning across various subsidiaries. Tony completed her MBA in finance with a distinction at the Mona School of Business and Management. Looking forward to hearing more about contactless security. Tony, over to you.
Thank you, Stacy, and good morning again, everyone. I'm going to just share my screen and get my presentation up. Just give me one moment. All right, so I'm going to assume that all looks good, tech team, and proceed. So thanks again for the opportunity, NCB, to share. I love talking about innovation, and I have to admit, in the world of payments, contactless has exploded in popularity worldwide. Just as Stacy said, it's definitely exploding in Jamaica. So I want to share with you, merchants, just briefly, what the current landscape looks like for contactless, both globally and locally. I think it's important to talk about the benefits to you as merchants for accepting contactless transactions in your businesses, and certainly to share some insight as to why MasterCard sees contactless as one of the most secure payment channels today. So both globally and locally, we're seeing a rapid increase in the usage of contactless transactions. MasterCard conducted a survey worldwide, and we saw that 52% of consumers prefer to tap with a card rather than inserting or swiping. So it's important. I'm going to use the term tap. So just that you understand that refers to the contactless transaction, right? Because we're not physically having contact between the card and the machine. We're simply tapping, utilizing near-field technology. Also, NCB can proudly boast that almost 100% of their point-of-sale terminals are ready to accept contactless transactions, which means, because NCB, we know, is one of our largest merchant acquirers in the country, Jamaica is almost at full ubiquity for contactless. So anywhere there's a point-of-sale terminal, chances are that it can accept your contactless card once enabled. We're also seeing in Jamaica that the number of contactless transactions are growing exponentially. As at October this year, we're seeing that transactions have grown almost 7 times over October last year. Now, we know that COVID really was a stimulant, right, for this exponential growth. But I am sure that as we, God willing, move into a post-COVID or new normal era, that this habit is really going to stay with us. So I don't see it as a fading trend. Now, not only are cardholders showing a preference for contactless, but we also see significant benefits to you as merchants if you promote it in your business. So MasterCard data shows us that a cardholder who is tap active, right, tapping away for their transactions, they are more likely to spend more than those cardholders who are not utilizing contactless. And we see this consistently across credit and debit cards. We've also measured the time it takes to complete a contactless transaction versus other methods. And we've determined that a contactless transaction is 10 times faster than traditional payment methods. And we know that merchants, you think about, the queue, the long line at the cashier, and you think about your customer experience. So this is a very significant benefit for you to keep in mind. And finally, really the theme of today is we see contactless as having the latest security technology, which will potentially reduce your rates of fraud by at least 33%. And I'm going to share more statistics around the rates of fraud. And I'm also going to share more statistics about the average spend of cardholders. So as I was saying, we see that contactless cardholders are spending up to 2 times, or rather they're transacting twice as much as non-tappers or those who are not using contactless. And if you look at the chart on the left, I've shown you markets at different stages of maturity. So seeding, emerging, accelerating, and mature. Based on where Jamaica is in terms of the number of point of sale terminals we have ready and the number of cards we have in the market, I would say we're in the accelerating phase. So we're definitely, your merchants, you are enjoying this 2 times spend rate of contactless cardholders. And not only are they transacting twice as much, but they're spending more. So they can spend up to 6.8 times what a non-contactless cardholder does. So this is significant benefit to your sales and top line. Before I dig deeper into the security technology, I do think that there are some important concepts to share about contactless. So firstly, I want to talk about the form factors, and then I want to talk about something called the card verification method limits. Now, digital payments can come in many different shapes. And because of contactless, this is the first step really towards enabling many different types of payment use cases. And some of you merchants may already have started to see some of these new payment methods in your business. But what I want to emphasize is it does not matter how a consumer is engaging or utilizing technology to make the payment, the process flow or your process flow really remains the same. So what are these different shapes and flavors? You already have been seeing physical contactless cards. So those are the cards with the contactless symbol on the front. You may be seeing mobile wallets. You're going to hear much more about mobile wallets in the coming months. And mobile wallets are really embedded in your cell phone. And so you may see persons using the phone to make the payment with your existing terminal. And you also might be seeing wearables. So these are the Apple Watches, Samsung Watches, even Fitbits. These wearables are now equipped with digital or virtual cards that can enable contactless payments in the same way that a physical contactless card will tap with the machine. It's the same way that you can tap with your mobile wallet or with your wearables. So it's important for you as merchants to keep that in mind. Some of these technologies, I wouldn't say we have wearables just yet in the market, but if a tourist comes or a Jamaican who lives overseas, if they come with their Apple Watch, they are able to present it at your point of sale as long as it's contactless enabled, and the transaction will flow as normal. Another key concept to understand is the cardholder verification limit. And I just caught the last piece of Dane's excellent presentation, so forgive me if he did mention this, but the card verification limit is where we require some form of verification of the cardholder's identity. I did hear Dane emphasize that today, that is either via a PIN or via signature. So in Jamaica, we require that we require CVM for all transactions, but not with contactless. With contactless, the market has determined that any transaction below $50 or the Jamaican equivalent does not require a PIN or a signature. And that is what makes it fast and convenient. Above that transaction limit, the cashier will be prompted to ask the cardholder to enter their PIN. And I think this is something that we can do more education around, because I have personally gotten calls from friends or customers saying, oh, the cashier told them to put in their PIN and they're doing contactless. And when I asked what they're buying, you know, it's a $20,000 item. And I said, well, contactless only works for transactions below 50 US. And that is one of the key security features that is embedded by design, and what I want to discuss a little bit more. So we see contactless as very secure. And there are three reasons for this. One is what I just shared, right? That we protect very large transactions, or we protect transactions over a certain amount, so that you can rest assured if your girlfriend took up your card off of the bedside table, she can't really go and buy, you know, she can't go and buy something too valuable. So the risk is controlled. Secondly, there's this concept of proximity data theft. Some persons may have heard that card skimmers can copy your card credentials while your card is still in your wallet, in your pocket, or if you're a man in your back pocket, because of the near field communication technology. MasterCard can tell you that these claims are not proven. A contactless transaction needs to be, or the contactless card rather, needs to be within 4 centimeters of the payment device for it to be accepted. And 4 centimeters for a card skimmer or a fraudster is uncomfortably close. So we do not see this as a proven claim. And it's one of the myths that we really want to dispel in the market. Thirdly, the transaction, there's a significant amount of security around the transaction and the 16-digit card number. Every contactless transaction is protected by a unique cryptogram, which is simply a piece of dynamic data that proves that the payment device is genuine. And so it means that a transaction cannot be fraudulently duplicated. When it comes to mobile devices, there is even an added layer of security, because remember I said persons can come with a mobile wallet in their phone to make a payment. So when they're using that form factor, there's also a concept of tokenization, where the 16-digit card number is replaced with a token. So the information that is shared with you as a merchant is the token and not the 16-digit card number. So fraudsters really don't have access to, they don't have the same level of access to the card data to create a counterfeit card. And on top of all of this, we give options to the issuers of the cards, whereas they can insert alerts. So you may, some of you, and I know NCB does this, you may receive an alert every time you use your credit card. Well, alerts can be placed on your debit card every time you do it via contactless, so that you will know right away if someone has taken your card and used it for fraudulent means. There also can be rules, additional rules that the bank puts in place. Now, this is the issuing side of the bank, puts in place to say, if they notice Tony has tapped her card 5 times within the space of 40 minutes, that seems a little suspicious. So what they'll do is on the 6th transaction, they'll prompt the card, or they'll prompt the machine to ask for the PIN, even if it is a transaction below the limit, just as an added security measure. So there's robust design embedded. And we can back this up with data. We studied contactless transactions in the UK over a 2-year period. And we saw that in the UK, even as contactless transactions saw exponential growth, and you see that in the chart on the left, it grew to over 19 billion transactions valued at 900 billion pounds. Despite this growth, contactless fraud rate was only at 3 basis points, which is significantly less than the traditional fraud rate of 8 basis points. And this translates to much lower fraud costs. And we're seeing that in totality, the fraud from contactless accounted for only 7 million pounds versus 25 billion for fraud conducted via the traditional means. So we believe, there is security embedded by design in contactless, and we've also done the research to show that there is a lower rate of fraud when you use your contactless card or contactless machine. And in closing, merchants, I do want to emphasize that it is, especially again, as we continue in this really low touch environment, right, where we want to minimize contact, to enhance and optimize the contactless experience in your place of business, there are sort of 2 key things you want to keep in mind. You want to ensure that you have signage and that the symbol is visible, right, near at the point of sale and throughout the store. I'm sure NCB can offer you stickers and decals and such, and you may already see significant MasterCard signage in some of the larger merchants. We'll continue to invest in the market that way to raise the awareness and education. And the second important practice that I really want to emphasize for you merchants is that the customer really should not hand the card to the cashier. The cashier should enter the information in the terminal, turn the terminal to face the card holder so that they can keep their card in hand and tap and go. So I thank you for your attention, and I welcome any questions.
So much today. Thank you, Tony. That was really informative, especially the part about me spending more money with my merchants because I have a contactless card. And of course, I'm a techie, right? I'm all about living that tech lifestyle. So I can see myself buying more shoes if I can just tap and go. You know, it seems very easy to do. Okay, great. So thanks, Tony. I do have some questions for you, and we'll kickstart the questions with the clarification around what is the difference between contactless payment versus the EMV chip.
So the EMV chip is a technology that facilitates contactless. So it's just really the ability to store transaction data within a chip as opposed to a mag stripe. So that's why we now talk about inserting a card in the terminal so that the chip can be read. Now, in parallel to the EMV technology, we have NFC, which is near field communication, which allows the sharing of data across a short distance. And it is that technology combined with the chip that creates a contactless transaction. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, that's a good point there, because my next question for you, since you talked about that close proximity, I know that in your presentation you mentioned, you know, that fraud with someone, you know, passing by the card they'd have to come in real close contact. It would have to be a rub-up kind of thing in order for them to be able to transact, right? But if I walk past a machine, let's say I walk very close to a machine, will my card be charged without my knowledge?
Again, you would have to be extremely close to the machine, and you'd have to be perfectly angled.
Right.
Right. So it's not a simple waving past the sensor, right? The card has to be within 4 centimeters on top.
Okay.
So this concept of just passing by is not proven.
Okay, excellent. Thanks for that clarification. Now, I have a contactless card. I'm actually a proud MasterCard holder. Why is the cashier requesting to tap my card on the POS terminal? Is that the correct card acceptance procedure?
Thank you for that, Stacey. No, it is not. The best practice is for the cashier to turn the terminal to face you, the card holder, and you keep your card in hand and tap the machine.
Okay, okay, got it.
Again, I want to compare it to, you know, if you think about your visit to the US, terminals are really in cradles, so they can easily swing the machine to face you.
Right.
And in some cases, it stays permanently facing the card holder and never really the cashier. But there are other reasons why we don't have that yet quite much in our market, but we hope to get there soon.
Okay, and I actually applaud all the work that's being done through NCB and its partners with these innovations around fraud and security protection, because I think we've really seen quite a few advancements in our region, you know, coming to bear now. You know, if you travel, you'd have noticed in the US these things have been in place for, you know, a couple of years, but we're really seeing it here now, and I'm excited and I'm welcoming that transition for us to become more technological savvy, you know, and be able to have these solutions. So thanks, Tony, for sharing and providing us with so much insight on contactless security.
Thank you, Stacey. Thank you, NCB.
Excellent. All right, guys, now following up, we have a poll question for you. We just want you to drop your answers in the chat, making sure that you're staying engaged. It's an interactive session, right? Was this session helpful and informative? This past session, was it helpful and informative? And even the one before with Dane, was it helpful and informative to you? Please make sure that you drop your answer in the chat. Then I have another question for you guys as you're answering that one. Will you pass on this information to your team members? Will you pass on this information to your team members? Dane shared that education is the top priority for our merchants. And so as you are supporting yourselves and your organizations in becoming better at this, you want to make sure that your team is also educated. All right, so make sure you're filling out those 2 poll questions, guys, and we're going to take a 5-minute bio break. 5 minutes. Don't go too far. Maybe you want to top up your coffee or top up your tea or get another kind of drink or beverage. Maybe you want to run to the restroom very quickly. But we'll be back in just 5 minutes. Stay with us.
Selling online is easy. Whether you're self-employed without a business account or a large corporation ready to join the global online marketplace, we have a solution for you. Accept payments via WhatsApp as well as other social media with NCB Payment Button. No website, no problem. Get started in minutes with ready-to-use customizable templates supported by NCB website templates, or sell to customers across the globe in an online mall with NCB Marketplace. Plus, get a pre-approved business credit card. At NCB, we have the right solution for your business to get you online and earning 24/7. Sign up today at jncb.com/e-commerce. Conditions apply. Enjoy the convenience of NCB Payment Solutions. NCB Mobile Point of Sale and e-commerce solutions will allow you to facilitate more transactions in store, online, anywhere, anytime. Plus, receive payments on your social media channels with payment buttons. Use your NCB credit card to stock up and pay taxes and utilities. Easy, safe, and secure. Plus, rewards. Earn unlimited cashback or points redeemable on NCB Miles. Give customers an experience they'll love and never miss a sale. Sign up for NCB e-commerce today at jncb.com/e-commerce and get your first monthly fee waived. Or apply for your credit card via email at ncbspecialoffer@jncb.com. Selling online is easy. Whether you're self-employed without a business account or a large corporation ready to join the global online marketplace, we have a solution for you. Accept payments via WhatsApp as well as other social media with NCB Payment Button. No website, no problem. Get started in minutes with ready-to-use customizable templates supported by NCB website templates, or sell to customers across the globe in an online mall with NCB Marketplace. Plus, get a pre-approved business credit card. At NCB, we have the right solution for your business to get you online and earning 24/7. Sign up today at jncb.com/e-commerce. Conditions apply. Enjoy the convenience of NCB Payment Solutions. NCB Mobile Point of Sale and e-commerce solutions will allow you to facilitate more transactions in store, online, anywhere, anytime. Plus, receive payments on your social media channels with payment buttons. Use your NCB credit card to stock up and pay taxes and utilities. Easy, safe, and secure. Plus, rewards. Earn unlimited cashback or points redeemable on NCB Miles. Give customers an experience they'll love and never miss a sale. Sign up for NCB e-commerce today at jncb.com/e-commerce and get your first monthly fee waived. Or apply for your credit card via email at ncbspecialoffer@jncb.com. Selling online is easy. Whether you're self-employed without a business account or a large corporation ready to join the global online marketplace, we have a solution for you. Accept payments via WhatsApp as well as other social media with NCB Payment Button. No website, no problem. Get started in minutes with ready-to-use customizable templates supported by NCB website templates, or sell to customers across the globe in an online mall with NCB Marketplace. Plus, get a pre-approved business credit card. At NCB, we have the right solution for your business to get you online and earning 24/7. Sign up today at jncb.com/e-commerce. Conditions apply. Enjoy the convenience of NCB Payment Solutions. NCB Mobile Point of Sale and e-commerce solutions will allow you to facilitate more transactions in store, online, anywhere, anytime. Plus, receive payments on your social media channels with payment buttons. Use your NCB credit card to stock up and pay taxes and utilities. Easy, safe, and secure. Plus, rewards. Earn unlimited cashback or points redeemable on NCB Miles. Give customers an experience they'll love and never miss a sale. Sign up for NCB e-commerce today at jncb.com/e-commerce and get your first monthly fee waived. Or apply for your credit card via email at NCB Special Offer.
Hello and welcome back. It is still good morning over here. I hope you guys are also having a wonderful morning and feeling well informed with all of the insights that we've gotten from our experts thus far as a part of our Merchant Security Summit. So we're going to continue the conversation with a little bit of insight around managing fraud for digital payments. According to Inc.com, 50% of small businesses have experienced cyber attacks. All of those that are victims of these type of attacks, more than 60% of businesses this size go out of business within 6 months of the breach. Data security for your small business is not just important, it's crucial. As again, guys, these numbers may sound staggering, but they're so important for you to understand the implications of not being cyber secure in your businesses. Now, let me introduce our next speaker, Lee, and I'm going to ask Lee to just help me out with the pronunciation of his last name because I'm really good at messing that stuff up, right? So Lee is going to be joining us to tell us just how crucial managing fraud for digital payments is. Lee has more than 18 years of experience in the banking and telecoms industry, and he's the Senior Director of Merchant and Acquirer Solutions, oversees the expansion of CyberSource in LATAM, or Latin America, and the Caribbean region, mainly to support sustainable e-commerce and promote the growth of card-not-present transactions. Lee, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
No, thank you. Can you hear me well?
Yes,
Thumbs
I
up?
can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, so the first question, my last name is Arau, A-R-A-U-J-O. You can say Araujo, I take it many times. So thanks for the invitation. And before kicking it off, I mean, very good presentations prior to mine. And we have seen, I support that the card present transaction has been secured, no, with the different technologies, with EMV chip and so on, and even contactless, as our prior presenter was sharing, Tony, if I'm not mistaken. However, where we have to do a better job as an industry is with the card not present transaction, with e-commerce, online transaction, and that's what we refer to as digital payments. We have been going through a process of digital transformation prior to COVID. And COVID has only done one thing but to accelerate this transformation. And there's one big trend that overcomes any other trend, which is e-commerce growth is amazing. Now, we have seen an e-commerce acceleration that came because of COVID, but is going to remain. So that means that more card not present transactions are going to happen today in the near future, and they're here to stay. So what we have to be looking at is how to protect you merchants now that we are embracing e-commerce, okay? And the fraud is now going towards that direction, as you were saying. So let's get into the presentation. So, hold on, let me stop this. Again. Okay, so this is the first slide that I always have to share, and according to my legal, is the most important. But starting to talk about digital payments. before getting into fraud itself, I wanted to share what are the four priorities that we understand you merchants have to be taken into consideration as you embrace this digital transformation wave. So the first thing that you need to do when we talk about selling online is that you need to be able to collect your payment transactions from the digital world. So payment acceptance is the first priority for any merchant. You need to accept Visa, of course, and the other brands, and any other alternative payment method that your markets have embraced. Your consumers have embraced in your market. So perfect. Now you start accepting payments electronically. The second thing is that once you accept that payment, you want to do it in a very positive experience, in a nice user experience, because you can invest as a merchant to drive, the consumer to your website, to your mobile app, and put the product. You find a product that they want, and then they put the product in the shopping cart, and everything is beautiful, and the payment experience has to be beautiful as well. So the thing that I want to transmit here is that it's not only enable the payment, but also enabling that payment in a very positive way. So once you accept payment in a positive way with pillars number 1 and 2, here comes the topic of our session today. You need, as merchant, to make sure that those transactions that you accept online don't become a fraudulent transaction, which means that you will eventually lose the sale, and not only the sale, but also the additional cost related to any fraud. And for this, we're going to be talking how you merchants have 2 options to protect yourself. And finally, once you protect yourself from this fraudulent transactions that are known as chargebacks in the payment industry, you need to make sure that once you are processing payment data, that payment data is not exposed in such a way that hackers or bad employees take advantage of that information, and steal that information to use it on other ways that shouldn't be done. So you need to protect the payment data that you are processing. In summary, you need to collect the data, deliver a positive experience, protect yourself against fraud, and protect the payment data to offer security. And while you do that, those 4 priorities as a merchant, all those combinations, you're going to fine-tune each of these pillars. The outcome has to be a higher conversion rate. It means that if you receive a payment from a consumer, no matter if you are offering higher security, managing fraud, delivering a positive payment experience, your conversion has to be better, has to be approaching the conversion rate that in a card-present world happens. Because it is known that for different reasons, because merchants are trying to protect themselves against fraud, might end up rejecting transactions. So the name of the game ends up being increased conversion. Okay. So let's see now that we're going to be talking about how to manage fraud and offer security. Okay. So when we manage fraud, or the merchant wants to manage the fraud they're exposed to, let's start saying that you have 2 options. Okay. And the options are defined by who assumes the risk of an eventual fraud. As you know, doing business, there's no way you can, shut fraud to 0. For that, you have to close the business. What you have to do is mitigate the fraud in levels that make your business profitable. So option 1 is that the merchant takes control of the fraud management. Option 2 is relying on the issuer of the credential to take control of the fraud management. Let's start with the first one. You merchant taking control of how you will manage fraud. So for this case, what but that all in general, all the solutions proposed, and Visa has its own solution, which is called CyberSource. We will see that very slightly at the end. But any solution that gives the ability for the merchant to control fraud, what does is receive the context of the information, receive the transactional data, not only the payment method, but the email, the device from where the transaction is happening, if it's a phone, if it's a tablet, if it's any other device, and compare all that information with historical information, okay, which is on your left side. And then based on artificial intelligence, machine learning, come up with the risk score that will define the risk level of that transaction. To do what? So the merchant, based on business rules and the appetite to us for I guess the risk associated to a transaction, will either approve or reject the transaction, or send it to a secondary process to review the transaction manually, or any other mechanism that the merchant might have. But the point here is that either prior to the authorization or after the authorization, the merchant has the ability with this option to, through this type of solution, analyze the risk level of transaction based on machine learning in the transactional data. The outcome of this process is that the merchant is the one defining if the transaction is accepted, or is it rejected, or is it sent to a secondary process. The cost of that is if there is any fraud associated to that transaction, the merchant will be liable, okay? But the positive side of this is that it's the merchant that defines how the UX, how the consumer experience is impacted, okay? So that's option number one, when you have control provided or managed by the merchant. The second option, as I mentioned earlier, is to have the issuer manage the user experience. And how do we do that? It was already mentioned earlier in the sessions, and it is all about 3D Secure. 3D Secure is an industry standard from EMV, which allows the issuer to validate that the cardholder is the cardholder. So prior to the authorization, the merchant, through this protocol, through this mechanism, is allowed to request the issuer via the network, via Visa and the other networks, can you please ask the issuer if Lee is Lee who is buying with this card? So the merchant provides not only the payment data, but other contextual information as in the first method. So the issuer can define if Lee is Lee, okay? Many of you have heard about this because 3D Secure is not new. It's more than 10 years old, actually. But we are in the second wave of 3D Secure, what we call 3D Secure 2.0. And in this new version, we have learned what is actually needed to make this authentication mechanism more valuable for the commerce and for the participants of the ecosystem, the payment ecosystem. The first thing is that it has to be mobile friendly. It has to be supported by apps, by Android, by iOS. The second thing is, well, let's give the issuer more information that is related to the context of the transaction. So now the issuer can know the device where the transaction is coming from, where the product is being sent to, the delivery address, what's the emails associated to this. So if the issuer knows that Lee is making a transaction and with his card number, right? And the merchant X is saying, hey, issuer, can you let me know, can you validate if Lee is Lee? And I send Lee's credit card number, the email that Lee uses always, the delivery address, for the address that I have in my billing statement by the issuer, associated to my account with the issuer. So everything is within normal behavior. The issuer can simply say, hey, merchant, yes, go ahead. deliver the product to him, finish the transaction, or send the authorization, better said, without adding friction to the transaction. Because the issuer, on behalf of the cardholder, is saying, hey, it's Lee. But on the other hand, if the issuer doesn't, find a transaction within the boundaries that they make them feel comfortable, then the issuer can step up and challenge the transaction and send me what is known maybe as a SMS OTP, one-time password, or send me a code, a one-time code, so I can capture it during the payment process, okay, to validate that I am Lee. So the option for the issuer is to add friction to the transaction. And because the issuer is participating and the merchant has given, data elements to make the decision, has enabled all the information, the context to the issuer to make the right decision, now the issuer becomes liable. There's a liability shift. If fraudulent happens to this transaction, if the transaction is not recognized by the issuer, well, the merchant is protected against this type of fraud. So now the issuer is liable for certain types of fraud. That is 3D Secure. So 2 options for the merchant to protect against fraudulent transactions. The first one is analyzing the merchant in real time, the transaction, to decide if it's accepted or rejected. The merchant is liable, of any fraud, but controls the UX. On the other side, the second option, the merchant relies on 3D Secure, asks the issuer to authenticate the cardholder, gives the UX control to the issuer. Now the issuer is managing the user experience. Then the final topic of the session is how to offer security related to devaluating the payment data that is processed within the merchant's systems. The solution for this is to avoid you merchants at all processing payment data. Have an entity, be Cybersource from Visa or any PCI certified entity that has the right system in place to do two things on your behalf. One, capture the payment data on your behalf. Okay, so the merchant is not exposed to handling payment data. And the second thing is, if you want to provide one-click type of payment experience, you have to store the credentials, you have to store the payment data. So if you're going to do that, have a PCI entity, certified entity, like Cybersource, store that information for you. And you just use what it's called as a token, a reference to the card. And if you lose that reference, if you lose that token, that information cannot be translated into the card value that's behind that token. Okay, so that's the beauty of tokenizing, of using a token service to devaluate the payment data. So if it's compromised by hackers, if it's compromised by internal employees, then nothing happens. Why? Because the payment data is stored within a PCI compliant provider. In our case, Cybersource, we store that information in PCI compliant data centers. And there's that, I mentioned the security value of tokenizing the transactions, but the EMV, the EMV industry has created another value for tokenization, which is part of what we call network tokens. There's a network token by Visa, there's a network token by MasterCard, there's a network token by the other brands, by Amex, which not only add this security layer and devaluates the information, but adds other value services that are very important for the merchant and the conversion, which is the name of the game, as I said at the beginning, that allows that the merchant to know and have the latest and greatest information related to that payment data. If I'm a merchant that I'm billing recurrently, Lee, if my card is changed because it expired under this new token program by EMV and the networks, what happens is that the networks and Visa lets the merchant know that the card has been updated and avoids interruption of the payment service. So two values from working with a tokenization, this layer of security, and having the credential updated with the latest information so the conversion would be higher. So that's why we say down here that we are removing the payment data from the merchant system, but because all the major payment networks participate, we have the updated card data, and that will increase the conversion. And of course, we will have that information stored within a PCI compliant data center. So just to close it, for merchants to have access to the acquired system, payment ecosystem, to NCB acquiring system, and have access at the same time to different value-added services to address the 4 pain points, accept, collect, user experience, fraud management, and payment security. Well, you can use a payment management platform. In our case, within Visa, we have CyberSource that does provide those 2 topics that we were talking today, which is fraud management on the top and tokenization on the bottom, but also provides the 2 other elements, which is the collect, and the UX, having the ability to connect you with NCB as your acquirer or any alternative payments, and do it in a brand agnostic fashion. So with that, I give it back to you, and to see if there's any question that you would like us to answer. Thank you.
Much, Mr. Lee Arojo. I hope I got that close to right.
You got it.
Very informative session. And we do have one question for you before we move on to our next speaker. Why is it important for me as a merchant to invest in cybersecurity or fraud prevention tools? And this is a really critical question, because I feel that many merchants think it's cost prohibitive and don't necessarily think it's essential in the immediate term. Why do you think it's important for us to invest in cybersecurity solutions?
It's a great question, and it brings me. I think I should share some numbers that will illustrate, that there is a real return of investment. Okay. Merchants report, not our clients, but there's a survey that we invite you to download at cybers.com, that we asked hundreds of merchants globally, and they have reported that they lose an average $3 almost, depending on the region, but $3 of every $100 that they sell online. But that's a lot of money. Okay. The second thing is that they also are rejecting, because of fraud, around 3% as well of the transaction. So in total, you are either losing 3%, and on top of that are rejecting 3% of transaction. So that's 6% of business that is being lost because the merchants are trying to manage fraud. If you do that with the right tools, those numbers should be, each of them, the chargeback ratio should be below 1%. No merchant should be operating with 1%, above the 1% of losses. So you're already saving 2/3 if you are a merchant with 3% of fraud. And merchants with the right tools are losing, let's say, 20 cents for every $100 that they sell, like 20 basis points. So when you see all the money that you are saving because you are deploying a tool that is going to protect you against fraud in a costly manner, it's not that you're going to pay the same amount to protect you against that fraud. No, the cost is not prohibitive. It's a fraction of that. So definitely, if you do it, you're going to make more money, and better, you're going to serve better your customers. Your brand is not going to be compromised. They're not going to say, oh, in this merchant, if you buy, I have a bad experience, and they accept any type of consumers, fraudulent, hackers, and so on. So every big merchant are using these type of solution. And I guess the takeaway, one of the takeaways of this study is that the big merchants, enterprises know this, and they are with the right metrics, KPIs. Sadly, the medium merchants and the smaller merchants are not, the medium merchants are not doing their job. And the fraud has been increasing lately, because now that the big enterprises are doing their job, well, the hackers also have family to take care of. So they're going to go to the weakest link, in this case being the medium-sized merchants.
Right. Okay, no, thanks for that. I think when you talk about the return on investment, the case is already made for why it is critical for merchants to invest in cybersecurity and fraud protection. Thank you so much, Mr. Lee Oroha, for joining us, and have a great rest of your day. Now, guys, we are moving on to best practices for managing fraud on your e-commerce website. And this is, of course, the core, the heart of your online business presence. So we actually want to welcome back Dane to talk with us about this. Now, online retailers globally currently deal with around 206,000 attacks on e-commerce websites each month. And you thought I was probably going to say each year, but no, 206,000 each month. As the popularity of online shopping grows, so does the opportunity for these cyber criminals and unscrupulous consumers to scam online businesses. So I'm going to welcome back Dane, who is our manager of special investigations within NCB's Fraud Prevention Unit, to talk with us some more about the best practices for managing fraud on your e-commerce website. Dane?
Thanks for having me again, Stacey. So if any good has come out of COVID, we know that it has accelerated e-commerce transaction. We have seen a significant increase in the number of transactions that are processed via the card-not-present route. With that comes its own ups and downs, and hence the reason why I'm here today to present some best practices of how to minimize fraud on your e-commerce website. So what is fraud? What is e-commerce fraud, or card-not-present fraud, as a lot of persons love to refer to it. So the fraudulent use of someone's card information in order to perform unauthorized transaction over the internet. So that in essence what e-commerce fraud is. Why is e-commerce fraud such a significant problem for us? So the proliferation of e-commerce fraud is occurring because of, one, we have compromises of business email addresses, compromise of personal email address, spoofing or phishing, where fraudsters would send email mimicking financial institution or coming from any official source. Data breach is a huge problem, while we are seeing an increase in e-commerce fraud. And data would have been presented earlier about the Target breach, where we had 40 million customer credit cards that were exposed worldwide. Malware is another significant problem, where fraudsters would seek to embed malicious software on computers to capture customer information. They would also seek to embed these malware in your e-commerce website as well. We have a famous one now that is affecting a lot of e-commerce merchants worldwide, which we refer to as JavaScript skimmer. And what this does is where fraudsters target the checkout carts of e-commerce website, where they will seek to capture the customer debit or credit card, the PIN, the email, the address, the CVV code, and stuff like that. Ransomware is on the rise as well. We have seen a significant increase in that, especially since COVID, and denial of service attack. So what are some of the things that you can do to minimize e-commerce fraud on your platform? One, check for inconsistency in the order data. So cross-check the information in the order for information such as the IP address and the shipping address. Do these match? Whilst you might have the odd case where somebody might be in the United States or the UK and order one or two goods for somebody for delivery. But if you notice a consistent, see where several orders are being placed from an overseas IP address to a local shipping address, it is a red flag for you to take a deeper dive into what's happening with that order. Larger than average purchase. A large number of purchases is seen in a short time span. That is a red flag that all e-commerce merchants should be aware of. And you have to develop your own internal fraud prevention protocols to catch issues like these. NCB will partner with you. We will monitor for you, but it's very important as well. Similar to how in your brick and mortar location, you would develop protocols to ensure that your goods on the shelves are secure. It is the same methodology that is our mindset that you should bring to the e-commerce space. Our unusual location for delivery is another red flag. So if know your business or know your customers as well, KYC is very important. So if you're a business, you normally deliver within the corporate area, and suddenly you get one big order to deliver in one of the rural areas, it's a reason for you to do some further check, reach out to your financial institution for assistance, or probe the customer somewhere as well to ensure that the order is legitimate. Multiple shipping address is another red flag. So be on the alert for our customers who make multiple purchase order. So you have one billing address, but you are shipping to multiple different addresses for delivery. And that is one for you to look out for. As I said, multiple transactions done in a short time frame. So many orders are placed using several credit cards in a short time span. So if you notice that you have the same customer, same shipping address, same delivery address, and it's coming from multiple credit cards, that is because the average customer might have 3 or 4 credit cards, but when you see the same customer or the same delivery address coming up for 20, 30, 40 credit cards, then you know that is a red flag for you to look. And even worse, multiple successive failed transactions. If you take away nothing from this presentation, ensure that in the back end of the e-commerce platform, whichever one of NCB powered e-commerce platform you're using, whether it's Figaro or the others, ensure that you log in to the back end and check for successive decline transaction, whether it be for incorrect CVV, incorrect expiry date. And look out for these reason code. Once you see multiple transactions being declined with reason code 14, 41, 43, 51, 57, 61, 62, and N7, that is definitely a red flag. So if you see 2 or 3 or more transactions being declined in quick succession for these, I would advise you to reach out to the financial institution for assistance. That could also be a sign or indicative of a brute force attack, or what referred to as a bin attack being taking place on your e-commerce website. And what that is those fraudsters will just sit down and seek to make up credit cards and just test them on your website to see if they can get an approval. So it's very important for you to develop your internal protocols to monitor the traffic on your e-commerce websites. Multiple order from a new country, and that is very important as well, because once you're in a cyberspace, you know you're open up to the world. So now, when you have your brick and mortar location and you're located in the corporate area, you only sell to person who physically attend your place of business. But once you're in the e-commerce business, persons from anywhere around the world can order from your store. So ensure that you're looking out for those new location. And as I said earlier, develop your KYC, know your customers, know the size of the order, the amount, the multiples and stuff like that to ensure that best practices are being followed. Conduct, and this point cannot be overly emphasized, conduct a regular website audit to ensure that your SSL certificate is up to date, because this is what fraudsters will exploit to gain access to your e-commerce website. Regularly monitor your website for suspicious activities and use the hypertext transfer protocol secure, the HTTPS. The S means that it is secure. So ensure what that does, it mean that you communicate the information over a secure protocol. It's very important that we develop the website with these in mind. Now, one of the most important things that persons must bear in mind when operating a secure e-commerce platform is that you must incorporate a data security budget in your business plan or within your day-to-day operation. It's one of the first things that merchants tend to cut once they have a budget constraint. But I want to advise against it, because similarly to how you would not cut the physical security budget, you should not cut the cyber security budget, especially given the new way of doing business that COVID has accelerated on us now. Because the least gap, the smallest of gap that fraudsters will exploit, you might experience a denial of service attack. They might even embed malware on your e-commerce platform to capture customer information. Ensure also that you are PCI DSS compliant, and Tanya will speak more about this later. But in essence, what PCI DSS is saying to us is that we should not be storing too much sensitive information. Do not store, if you store too much information that is not needed in order for you to know your customer or to authorize your transaction, what you're doing is inadvertently exposing the risk associated with doing e-commerce transactions. So you should not be storing the full 16 digits of the credit card, you should not be storing the expiry date, you should not be storing the CVV and stuff like that. So PCI compliant is one of the most important things as it relates to conducting transaction on e-commerce platform. Establishing a card registration process. So in the brick and mortar environment, persons would seek to get a UV light, and if you're collecting a $1,000 bill, you'll hold it up into the air or you put it under the UV light. This is what card registration does for your e-commerce platform. It actually tests and authenticates the customer to say that I, Dane Nicholson, is the one who owns this credit card and is conducting the transaction on your e-commerce platform. So if you implement card registration on your e-commerce platform, it is almost 99.9999% foolproof that once you get an approval via a card registration process, it is the customer themselves that is processing the transaction. Because what it does, it allows the customer to come on your website, then it sends a random value between $0 to $9 on the website, and then the customer would have to now go back to their bank, verify what that dollar value, random dollar value is, and then come back and enter that on your e-commerce platform to verify that is actually the customer. I know some persons might play the customer experience card, but it is one of the most secure way to ensure that you are processing good transaction. As I said earlier, it's best not to have a transaction rather than to process a bad transaction, because there are several compliance reasons as to why you need to ensure that you are processing good transaction. And also, the use of 3D Secure is an added layer of security for e-commerce platform. And this is a partnership between Visa and MasterCard, where the Visa is verified by Visa and MasterCard is MasterCard Secure. So what this essentially does, it protects the merchants from chargeback. It is not a license to go and process any and every transaction, because us, NCB, as an issuer, has a fiduciary responsibility not to participate in proceedings of crime. So even though it is mandatory for the merchants to be 3D secure, if NCB knows that you are a collusive merchant and you are willingly participating in these fraudulent activity, we have to take action to ensure that we protect the merchant from themselves as well. Implement count risk assessment approach on the e-commerce website, and this will be expounded on later. But essentially what Cont'd, it prevents, it allows you to prevent bin attacks and stuff like those from taking place on your e-commerce platform. And also it gives you a profile of the credit card that is being used and number of time that the credit card is used to purchase things either on your website or worldwide as it relates to fraudulent activity and good transactions as well. Ensure that you use the most up-to-date and current security package that is available based on the e-commerce platform that you are operating. Do not shortchange this in any way. Ensure that updates are done on time. Ensure that you have regular audits, because these are gaps that fraudsters and hackers are sitting down and just waiting to exploit. And as I said, do not cut the security budget for your e-commerce platform. And finally, business such as brick and mortars hire security guards personnel to apprehend shoplifters. They also install grills and alarms to nab intruders. E-commerce merchants should apply similar principles by implementing online best practices to safeguard their business. Protect your online store against fraudulent activities by consistently monitoring for suspicious activity. Regularly scan your website for malwares and ensure that your website is operating on the latest software. That is extremely important, that you ensure that updates are done and you're operating on the latest software that is available, because fraudsters will seek to exploit this quickly. So if you employ those best practices, whilst we would love to eliminate fraud and have it at zero, we know that that is virtually impossible, because we have to balance the customer experience. Because if you develop the website with only security in mind, it will be too difficult for your customers to purchase transaction online, so you won't have any sale. And if you develop it with only the customer experience in mind, it will be too easy, so you would have a lot of fraud, and it will run into compliance problems and even causing us to terminate your relationship with us. So it is very important for us to balance the customer experience and the security to ensure that you, the merchant, is safe, and the customer and your issuer, acquirer, NCB, is safe as well. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent presentation again, Dane. And I also really appreciate the reiteration about the investment. I think sometimes we think of technology as something over there that, you know, it automatically does what it needs to do. But that example that you gave on the last slide, where you talked about, you know, you hire a security guard, or you'll even put up cameras, etc. You'll spend money on a security system, an alarm system. It's the same way that you need to protect your online information. Now, I do have a couple of questions for you. As a merchant, right, what are some of the red flags that I should look out for as indicators of suspicious transactions? You did mention a few, and I kind of saw that, you know, I could be a customer red flag. But if you could remind our merchants, what are some of the things that we need to be looking out for in terms of red flags for indicators of suspicious transactions?
So one of the most important indicators of suspicious transaction is more than one decline. So if you have customers testing cards on your website, you will realize that you have multiple decline in a short period of time. That is a red flag for merchants to look out for. Also, you should be looking for inconsistencies within your order. So ensure that the IP address and the shipping address, most times, even though you'll have one and two nuances where you might have a boyfriend or a girlfriend overseas ordering gifts on Valentine's Days, but that should not be the predominant feature of how your e-commerce operate domestically. If you're operating internationally, that's a different kettle of fish. But once you're in the local space, ensure that the IP address and the shipping address correspond. So for example, like on Amazon, we'll have a lot of inconsistencies because of their international operation. So you have to develop KYC, know your customers, in order to ensure that when you see a suspicious transaction, you can quickly identify it. Okay,
thank you for that. Why does authorization not guarantee payment?
All right, so data breaches and stuff like that is why, and the card is taking place in our card not present space. So if I obtain the information fraudulently, then it means that you can go and utilize the information fraudulently as well. And if the merchant is collusive, not necessarily because the bank provide an authorization, it means that the merchant is to be paid, because if the merchant also has a fiduciary responsibility to ensure that they are processing good transactions. So if the merchant is collusive, the bank now must execute its fiduciary responsibility under the Proceeds of Crime Act to ensure that they protect the bank and the merchant from themselves as well. Okay. So that is why authorization does not necessarily guarantee that the merchant will be paid, because collusive merchant is the #1 reason why it does not guarantee it.
Okay, all right. And the last question I have before we move on to our next presenter is, if my company has been attacked by cybercrime, who do I contact first? All
right, so there are a series of things that will have to be done quickly. One of the first things you'll have to do is to ensure that you contact your bank to ensure that certain protocols are activated quickly to protect your information. And also, if the site has been compromised, we need to notify other issuers that might have exposed cards on the database. And also law enforcement. It is very important that you notify law enforcement to seek assistance to conduct the forensic analysis of the e-commerce platform to ensure that we can trace and minimize the exposure of any data loss that might have occurred.
Okay, okay, excellent. All right, well, that's all I have for you, Dane. Thank you so much. Great second presentation. And we are now going to move into a very exciting part of our discussion today, where we'll be getting into account fraud management tool demo. Now, fraud detection and prevention solutions are defined as tools that allow organizations to effectively manage and prevent high-risk, fake, or fraudulent online transactions. These tools can continuously monitor multiple metrics, such as financial transactions, user devices and behavior, orders, and much more. So let's take a deeper dive into fraud management tools with a demo. I love technology demos. Clearly I'm a techie, I'm a geek. I love the demos because you actually get to see the solutions at work and how it's going to work for you, right? So we're going into a demo with Cameron Fortmeyer, who is doing a demo of the Count fraud management tool. Now, Cameron began her journey with Count in 2020 on the direct sales team. As a category leader in the fraud prevention space, Count is recognized as an award-winning, reliable, and highly adaptable platform with over 9,000 merchants and 70-plus partners worldwide. Transitioning to the partner channel team, Cameron is responsible for managing relationships for Count's strategic partners, advising and consulting on e-commerce fraud trends and best practices, as well as collaborating on cross-functional initiatives with multiple stakeholders. Welcome, Cameron. I'm looking forward to seeing the demo.
Yes, thank you for having me. So obviously, Count is an award-winning AI-based fraud solution in the card-not-present space. We offer a whole suite of products. So anything from friendly fraud protection, which we know is really on the rise, especially with COVID, account takeover protection, as well as criminal fraud protection. It's our flagship product known as Count Command, and that's what I'll be speaking to today. So I'm going to start off with a slide deck before we go into the user interface. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Okay.
All right, so are you seeing the big screen or going with the notes?
Yes, seeing the notes now.
Okay. So I'm going to start off by giving just a little bit of background about Count. We launched officially in 2007, and we're actually the first to market fraud solution. Our history actually goes back to the late 90s when our sister company, who's in the digital goods space, ClickBank, was experiencing quite a bit of fraud. They developed Count internally, and it worked so well for them that they decided to launch Count as a standalone fraud solution in 2007. So in those 14 years of experience, we've worked with over 9,000 brands worldwide. We have presence in over 180 countries and territories, and we've seen over $700 billion worth of transactions. So this means that we have a ton of data, and I'm going to get into how that data benefits merchants in just a couple slides from now. So something that sets Count apart is our Identity Trust Global Network. So what does this mean? Our Identity Trust Global Network is essentially the data network. It's responsible for establishing that level of trust behind each and every payment, login, account creation. The network is linked by our AI and combines those trust as well as those fraud signals from 75 plus industries and verticals that we work in, 32 billion annual interactions, our 50 plus payment providers, card networks, and 70 plus partners we work with, as well as 17 billion devices. And these are all seen annually. We like to say that stopping fraud is the easy part of fraud prevention, but establishing that trust to keep a customer returning to that site is a little bit more difficult, but that's really where Count shines in the fraud prevention space. So this slide is to help visualize what that modern day customer journey looks like. Something that we have to take into account is that fraud is not just happening at that point of payment anymore, which I'm sure we all realize. It can really happen any step of the way when a customer is choosing to store a wallet, when they're making any changes to their account, when they're creating an account, when they're deciding whether to pick up the item in store or have it shipped to their home, when they're deciding whether to redeem the loyalty points and log into that loyalty account. At pretty much any interaction, fraud can occur, and Count is able to protect every step of the way. So a theme you may have noticed throughout this presentation so far is trust, and that is a key component of our company as well as the solution. So this slide, think of this as a target with
Right, it seems like Cameron's internet is checking out, in and out, is coming in and out. So we want to just give us a moment to help, to have her log back in. It seems as though we've lost her altogether now. Yes, I'm not actually hearing her, seeing her. Okay, so we'll just take a short break, guys, and come right back. I know that you are all very interested and intrigued in seeing the demos, so am I. So just check back over your notes on the conversation that we just had with Dane concerning your e-commerce site, and maybe start to look into some of the things that we've discussed as far as security that you should be checking into and looking out for those red flags. After break, we'll come right back. Thank you so much. Welcome back, everybody, and thank you so much for your patience. We left off with Cameron from Count showing us just some brief information about the background of the application and leading us into a demo in short order. So Cameron, I hear you're back with us. Welcome back.
Trouble with the internet. I'm in the office today, which I thought would have better internet than my house, but I guess not.
That's okay. We're good to go.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to start off with the multidimensional data piece. So the beauty of our solution is that we do have 14 years of collected data from thousands of different companies. That breadth and depth of data is really unmatched, and it can be viewed here in this three-dimensional manner. So Count's really able to see the whole picture, that 14 years of experience, 9,000 plus companies and 70 plus partners that we work with, 180 countries and territories, as well as our ability to look at different types of data. And I'm going to go into what that means in the next slide. So as we all know, data is extremely powerful in today's world, and that is why Count is collecting so much of it. So we have the ability to collect and contextualize thousands of different data points, and that different types of data can be seen here. So Count has the ability to look at payments data, so payment type, payment token, currency used. We have the ability to look at location ID data, so physical location, shipping address, address verification, time zone. We're looking at digital identifier data, which we know is crucial and it's a key indicator of fraud. So device ID, device type, IP address, logins, as well as sites visited. And then something that I really want to highlight is our ability to look at unique customer data. So those user-defined fields, coupon codes, loyalty numbers, anything that is specific and significant to your business, Count also has the ability to analyze and account for in our Omni score that I'm going to share what that means in the next slide. So now that I've talked about the data, I want to talk about how we're analyzing that data. So Count's Identity Trust Global Network, that data network, is powered by our 2 types of machine learning. That's something that sets us apart in the industry, using 2 types of machine learning to deliver our Omni score, which is essentially that safety rating from 0 to 100, rating how safe that transaction is for the merchant to accept. So just to take a step back, supervised machine learning. So learning from experience, looking at historical data, understanding what a good customer looks like for you, what a bad customer looks like for you, retraining itself and getting better over time. So unsupervised machine learning, this top one here, think of this as your instinct. So using that real-time cross-merchant linking technology. Here, I'm gonna stop my video. That might help the internet. Can you guys still hear me? Sorry about that. I think my internet's spotty.
Right. So we're still hearing you, and you can continue.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So this unsupervised machine learning piece, think of it as detecting anomalies, things that stick out, things that don't seem right. These 2 together are working in tandem to deliver our Omni score. So this is just to highlight what that unsupervised machine learning piece looks like and understand it a little bit better. So starting off, looking at linked by direct association. So think of this as a married couple. You start off seeing 2 cell phones, a shared credit card, 2 different emails. Nothing weird yet, it's very surface level data. Then we look a little bit further at that indirect association. So we're peeling back those layers and we find that this cell phone is connected to this email address, connected to this credit card, connected to another email address, so on and so forth. Count was able to find 5 different credit cards, 3 different devices, 10 different emails, and 5 different billing addresses. So you're really getting that spider web effect to detect the fraud that's going on beyond the surface level. And then this is just the workflow, which we're going to go on to in the user interface, but just at a very high level. I am by no means a technical person, so when I first saw this, a little overwhelmed, but I promise it's actually super straightforward. So starting off with that customer interaction, when a customer is clicking checkout, our technology is running in the background, analyzing those data points that I mentioned earlier. So we're looking at things like device ID, IP address, email address, billing and shipping. These different data points are then going to be analyzed by our AI and machine learning, leveraged against that identity trust data network, delivering our Omni score. from 0 to 100, how safe is this transaction? 100 being super safe, 0 being not safe at all. We want to obviously decline that. And then based off of these business policies and rules that we work with you to set, that transaction is either going to be approved, declined, or sent to a manual review queue. And this is all happening in 250 milliseconds, so there is no customer friction. The customer does not know what's happening. 250 milliseconds, so quick as you can blink your eye, much quicker than I explained the workflow. And then all of these decisions are going to be available to you in the customer-facing user interface. So it's known as our Agent Web Console. And in the Agent Web Console, you're able to see why these decisions were approved, why they were declined, why they were sent to review, gain more customer insight, as well as interact with Data Mart, which is our business intelligence tool where you can pull reports as frequently as you needed, run reports, overall just gaining a better understanding of your customer and what's going on with your business. So I like to end on this slide, not only to highlight the brands and diversity and variety of the customers that we work with, but also to show these are obviously some larger clients of ours. So chances are if someone's trying to commit fraud on your website, we've also seen them at one of our merchants or at one of our 70+ partners that we work with. And then this is my contact information. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop share while I get my user interface set up. So just one moment.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that setup, getting us ready to receive your demo of the workflow. In particular, I really liked or appreciated the way that you broke down machine learning, because that's really where the technology can be leveraged, right? Where we can't necessarily track and figure out a customer's email address connected to this phone, and then that phone number is also connected to another email address, and then maybe another
right.
card, right? So thank you for actually sharing that with us and breaking down how machine learning is operating in the background of Count.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Excellent.
All right. So we're going to start off seeing our homepage on our Agent Web Console. It's our dashboard. And on the dashboard here, you're going to see these different reports. So these are all super customizable. You see here, total payment amount. If this isn't relevant to your company or what you're interested in learning about, you're able to rearrange these or remove these, are called gadgets. If one of these is more relevant, what's going on, orders decision summary, orders decision per agent. If you're curious about your different fraud agents and how they're decisioning the orders, you can look at something like this here. But it's super customizable, very easy to use. And then we're going to go to these 4 different tabs. So starting off with our workflow tab, this is where you're going to go for suspect orders. So it's essentially that manual review queue that I talked about earlier. When you're deciding whether an order will be sent to manual review, this is where they live. It's orders pending review. So we're going to go in here to decision and order, and we'll be doing that in just a second. The report tab, this is Data Mart, so that business intelligence tool that I talked about, where you're able to pull and create reports as frequently as needed. Fraud control, this is where the rules live. So different rule sets that are pre-built, you guys are welcome to use. Compare different rule sets, as well as create no change rules, which are actually super cool because they actually don't impact the score or impact the transaction. It's just saying what would happen if you were to use this rule. So it's nice to use as a test. You're also able to create VIP lists. So VIP decline, VIP accept in this tab. And then admin tab, this is basically just the different permissions available to different employees. It's up to the discretion of the employer what they choose based off of employee status. So we're going to take a step into the workflow and look at a suspect order. So Count is really customizable. As I said, about 40% of our merchants are 100% automated. So that means they're either approved, decline, and do not do any element of manual review. However, 60% of our merchants do choose to do some sort of manual review. And this is where you're going to go. But really that 60% of merchants do choose to do manual review. It's great because you're able to get some customer insight. However, if you're in the digital goods space, maybe manual review isn't relevant to you. So we're going to go and look at, we have 2 orders pending manual review. So we're going to go to this top one and we see we have 2 different views. Analysis view. It's high level, but it's going to give you all the information you need in order to make that decision. while the details view, this is really for people who thrive and who love data. So we're going to take a look at the details view. All right, so starting off with our customer name, Bellatrix Lestrange. It's for all you Harry Potter fans out there. The email is coastdude10@gmail.com. This email has never been seen in Count's database before, which is extremely rare. Like I said, we've been in the industry for 14 years, 9,000 plus merchants, 70 plus partners. For us not to see an email before is really, really rare. So it's obviously going to be attributing to that Omni score. It's not the only thing accounted for, but when you first see that, it is kind of a tip off. Then we're going to go up here. This bar is showing that unsupervised machine learning piece I talked about. So it's that cross-merchant linking technology. This person is associated with 15 different credit cards, 12 different emails, and 7 different devices. Right off this, we understand this is probably not someone we want to do business in, but let's keep looking at what other information was entered. Now we're going to look at this time zone piece right here. So billing and shipping address says that they are in Denver, Colorado, but their device setting on their phone is showing that they are in the Ukraine. So we're going to go look at the device setting right here. And we see that their location is actually in the Ukraine, and they're using a proxy saying that they are in Denver, Colorado. So obviously they're trying to hide something, typically not a good sign. And then fraud control, that tab I talked about earlier. These are the different actions and rules triggered that I mentioned before. So an order is going to be reviewed when, based off of this business's preferences, when the Omni score, that safety rating, is less than 70. We'd like to review orders when there are more than 5 different credit cards associated with this person. So these are just the different rules triggered. Obviously, this score was a 43.3 out of 100. So it's essentially an F in school. Typically, this transaction would probably not have made it to the manual review queue. It would have been automatically declined, but it is helpful just to see the decisioning and the different data that you're looking at in this tool. And that is all I had for you guys today. This was very high level, but if you're interested in learning more, please submit a demo request. Obviously, would love to go into more specifics.
Thank you, Cameron. Thank you very much for the demo of Count. And we are now going to just ask you a couple of questions if you have the opportunity to answer with us. Stay with us a little bit. Okay, great. If I wanted to implement this fraud prevention tool within my business, how do I get started?
That's a great question. So obviously it would be probably just start at our website. It's super easy to use. You can actually submit a demo request right on the website. You're also able to chat with one of our sales representatives, and we do have partnerships with a number of payment processors, e-commerce platforms as well. So it's always good to check in with the salespeople to see, because it does make integration a little bit simpler, which I know is always good for our dev teams.
Excellent. And can you remind us of what that web address is, please, for our merchants who have tuned in?
Yep, it's just count.com.
Okay.
KOUNT.com.
Very easy, count.com. All right. Now, the next question I have is really for those of us who may not be as technically savvy. You are moving around in the workflow very seamlessly, which I would expect because you're a part of the Counts team. But is the setup process technical, or is it something that myself as a single business owner can set up, or would I have to hire a technical team to get it done?
That is a great question. So integration is really dependent on the different merchants, whether you're using a pre-built integration with a different e-commerce platform that we do have pre-built integrations with, or with one of our partners where the integrations are also pre-built. But onboarding is pretty seamless as a process, just because we really pride ourselves in our customer support. So helping you with your rules setup, really helping you to understand the Count platform and to make sure you're equipped with the tools needed to be successful with Count and to fight the fraud.
Okay, great, excellent. Thank you so much for the presentation and for the demo of Count, Cameron. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks so much, you too.
All right, guys, now we have 2 more amazing speakers coming up, and before they get into their presentations, we want to make sure that you are interacting with us and checking in with us. We have a poll question for you. Was the speaker engaging? Our poll question that we have up now is, was the speaker we just had engaging? So we want to make sure that you just log your answers in. You should be seeing that poll coming up on Zoom. And we'll be moving into our next presentation, which is around payment card industry data security standards. Payment card industry, PCI, data security standards, DSS. So that's PCI, DSS is what we're going to be talking about now. PCI compliance is a term that every merchant should be very familiar with, all right? It's like the bar exam for lawyers, but more frequent. And also simpler, right? All NCB merchants are required to meet the payment card industry security standards, and NCB has partnered with ControlScan, a managed security service provider, to ensure the safety of their merchants and customer card information. Here with us to talk more about this is Tanya Thompson. Welcome, Tanya. Tanya is actually joining me on stage. Now, Tanya is the Payment Card Industry Compliance Officer at NCB with over 15 years in the information technology industry. She holds a Master of Science degree in Management Information Systems from the University of the West Indies. Tanya possesses multiple international certifications in information security and data privacy, including Payment Card Industry Professional, which is PCIP is the certification designation. She has been managing and leading the PCI DSS compliance program at NCB over the last 4 years. And I am just always excited to talk to another woman in tech. So welcome, Tanya. I cannot wait to hear about PCI compliance, which is a significant requirement for all merchants who participate with NCB.
Thank you for having me. Welcome. If you have been watching the summit so far, you have been introduced to PCI DSS. Numerous presenters have indicated or spoken about it. But in order to understand PCI DSS, we have to step back. Why did the payment brands find it fit to come together to create this standard? So in 2006, the council, the PCI Security Standard Council, which is responsible for the PCI DSS standard, which we spoke about, was founded in 2006 by American Express, Discover, Visa, JCB, and MasterCard. Now, the mission of the council is to enhance the global payment account data security by developing standards and supporting services that drive education, awareness, and effective implementation by stakeholders. If you use a point-of-sale device, there is a standard for that. If you use an ABM, there is a standard for that. So the council has tried to implement standards for all areas of the payment network. The PCI DSS applies to all entities that store, process, and transmit cardholder data. It covers technical and operational practices for system components included in or connected to environments with cardholder data. Basically, if you accept or process payment cards, PCI DSS applies to you. Now, each founding member of the council currently have their own compliance program for the protection of their affiliated payment card data. Each payment brand is also responsible for tracking and enforcing penalties and fees for non-compliance. As a merchant, you're encouraged to contact your payment brand or your acquirer directly for information about their compliance program. Each payment brand has different tiers for compliance. So they have level 1 down to level 4. The compliance requirement for a level 1 merchant is way more challenging, a lot more requirements to meet than for a level 4 merchant. So that is why we encourage you to contact your payment brand or acquirer. If you're a merchant, chances are you would have seen a self-assessment questionnaire, or SAC for short. This is usually given to the merchant on onboarding or annually as a part of the PCI compliance program. So the SACs are used as validation tools for merchants and service providers that are eligible to evaluate and report their compliance via self-assessment. There's also another compliance requirement that is not self-assessment, but that is if you're not a level 2, 3, or 4 merchant. That's an on-site assessment. There are different SAQs available intended to meet different types of environment. So if you're an e-commerce vendor solely, the SAQ that you will be required to complete is different than if you are a point-of-sale merchant. So what is at risk? Why do we need to do the SAQs? According to PCI standards, the chip, the PAN, which is a 16 digits, the cardholder name, the CVV or CAV or the security code, these are all information that we must protect. One of the tenets of the PCI standards, if you do not need cardholder data or sensitive authentication data, which the chip, the magnetic stripe falls into that category, you do not store. Because if you store, then you have to protect. Why security matters? When your payment card data is breached, the fallout can happen quickly. You may lose customer trust in your ability to protect their personal information and take their business elsewhere. There's also the potential for financial damages from lawsuits, and your business may lose the ability to accept payment cards. So if you look at the diagram above, there are many persons, entities within the flow. As the merchant, you have a responsibility to protect. The cardholder also has a responsibility to protect the issuing bank, the processors, the sponsoring bank, and the whole industry. So together, we achieve more. The retail industry continues to be a target for financially motivated criminals looking to cash in on the combination of payment cards and personal information in this sector. Social tactics, including pretexting and phishing, are commonly used for fraudulent money transfers. In 2020, according to the Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report, 42% of the data compromised came from the payment sector in the retail industry. The NCB's Merchant Compliance Program. As a merchant who accepts payment cards via debit or credit, you are required to complete the Merchant Compliance Program with NCB and demonstrate your compliance. To assist, NCB has engaged an external partner called Control Signet Global Solutions. Additionally, our internal support officers will contact you to provide further information on how to complete this program, so you are not left on your own. If you have not been contacted, you can contact us. We have 24/7 customer care and merchants and sales relationship officers who are available. You can also email us at support@controlscan.com or ncbmerchantsecure.com. Remember, PCI compliance certification with NCB is free. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for that presentation. Thank you so much, Tanya. That was great. We do have a couple of questions for you before you continue with your busy day. So the first one is about the attestation. Why is it necessary for merchants to complete the compliance attestation annually?
Well, security is not a point in time. And the attestation is a process that the payment brands have put in place to ensure that the merchants are doing what they're supposed to do. And if you are not doing what you're supposed to do, then there are penalties and fees that will apply, because remember, the aim on the mission is to secure the payment gateway, all the flows. Right. And so you as a merchant has a responsibility. So the attestation is you're attesting that you are doing what you're supposed to.
Okay, great. It's essentially saying that I am being compliant.
I am being compliant.
Absolutely.
I'm protecting my customers' cardholders' data.
There you go. Now, the second question is, are there any additional benefits to having my business being PCI DSS compliant?
I believe so. it strengthens your security posture because you can extend the requirements further from just cardholder data, personal information. Remember, as an entity, you have the responsibility for protecting customers' data. Yes. And you don't want to be an entity where it is said that you don't protect their data. What about the reputational damage? Right. So your security posture can be strengthened. So you don't have to apply it just to card data, but to all data that comes through your entity.
No, that's an excellent point. And we actually have been talking about security as assurance for your brand reputation, right? So I think this is a great point that you brought across related to that. And then the third and final question I have for you is, why is the level of compliance determined by your payment brand or acquirer?
Right. So each payment brand has their own compliance program as indicated prior. Mm-hmm. And so they determine what is at risk for them. So they would have done maybe a risk assessment and they have categorized merchants in levels. Mm-hmm. So based on your level, then the level of requirements that you have to undertake might be less. So a level 1 merchant will require an external party to come on site to attest for them each year. However, a level 4 merchant can do a self-assessment attestation to say, oh, I'm doing all of these things. So it's based on the volume of transactions. So if you process 10 transactions, your level of risk is different from another merchant who, does 1 million.
Right.
So that is why the payment brands determine what they require.
Okay. All right, great. Well, thank you so much, Tanya, for sharing more with us around PCI DSS. And I'm sure that everyone who has been watching us and has joined recently is now learning a little bit more about that payment card compliance that you have to go through. Now, one of the key things that we have kind of brought on through the different courses of discussion is around brand reputation, which we just discussed in one of the questions that Tanya answered in terms of what are the benefits of having PCI DSS. Oftentimes, we again think about security as an issue related to our financial standing, but we also have to always consider our brand reputation and our customer security and their trust. So thanks again, Tanya, and we're now going to move into our final presentation, and I am happy to welcome back Gregory to the stage. We're going to be talking about chargeback and dispute resolution. So in 1974, the Fair Trade Credit Bill granted customers the right to dispute credit card transactions that were made without their authorization, or when they didn't get what they paid for. Now, this is an excellent policy in the cases that this is actually the reality. But of course, our fraudsters, unfortunately, have found this as a loophole to scam merchants out of well-deserved revenue. Well, let me reintroduce Gregory Peart. He is the Product and Portfolio Manager for Card Acquiring Unit within NCB's Payment Services Division. And he is going to be discussing chargeback and dispute resolution with us. Now, Gregory is the Product and Portfolio Manager, as previously mentioned. He has 20 years of banking experience, with over 5 being in the payments space. Gregory has successfully completed many courses in banking, as well as in the payments industry, and also has an MBA with honors from Florida International University and a BSc in banking and finance from University of the West Indies. Welcome back, Gregory. That's actually, my son is actually going to that exact school right now, so
okay.
Well educated. There you go.
Well, thank you very much again, Stacey. We're very excited to share with our viewers that as a part of being in business, you will have disputes. Or you manage disputes will determine the outcome. As Dean had mentioned earlier, a bad sale is better. No sale is better than a bad sale. So what we want to do is ensure that when you get a sale in through the front door, you're not losing it through the back door. So what we'll be covering today is to ensure that you are managing your sales and managing your dispute, managing the chargeback process, so you can better avoid chargebacks and also develop better relations with your customer base. So we're going to quickly cover what is chargeback, the reasons for chargeback, the chargeback cycle, and we'll also look at the dispute processing and how to avoid chargebacks. So essentially, a chargeback is when the value that was charged to a cardholder's card is returned to the merchant that had actually done the transaction. So it would be initiated by the cardholder to the bank that issued the card, and then that bank that issued the card would raise it through the payment system to the acquiring bank. And there are various reasons for chargeback. So you could have a chargeback because the transaction was not authorized by the card holder, and that would be deemed to be fraudulent. It could be that the transaction was an incorrect amount. So it could have been a transaction for 5,000 that was run as 50,000, or 5,000 Jamaican run as 5,000 USD. Could have been that the transaction was duplicated, or it could have been that the merchant was required to do a refund and had not done the refund. So there are various reasons, and what we're going to be discussing today, how can you better manage them for each reasons. So let's take a quick look into each one of the steps. So there are 11 steps. So step 1, the card holder would raise the dispute. Secondly, the issuer would review the dispute that is raised to determine if the information is adequate. If the information is inadequate, they'll ask the card holder for more details. Once the information is adequate, then they'll pass it through the card network, which could be like Visa or MasterCard, and then they in turn would send it to the acquirer. So let's say a transaction is done at an NCB merchant, such as yourself, the transaction would come to us for us to review. Once we've reviewed it, we'd actually send it to you, and you have 7 calendar days in which to reply to provide details to substantiate the transaction. And at that point, we do a representment of the transaction, and then therefore we'd actually send it through the payment system for the issuer to say, our merchant has provided adequate evidence that this cardholder has done the transaction. And if there's still a dispute, it will go to the network for arbitration, and then a final outcome will be determined. So as we look at that, we're going to say, okay, what are the different examples for disputes? And we're going to be going through a few, and how the cardholder could raise it, and as a merchant, what the role you would need to play. So we look at fraudulent or unauthorized transaction. We also look at incorrect amount. We look at goods or services not received, or not received as described, or refund not processed, or canceled goods and services, or duplicate transaction. So firstly, the cardholder said, "Me never do this transaction. I did not do it. I do not know about it. I did not make or authorize this transaction." The merchant, you, would be required to provide details to link the transaction to the customer. So it could be the name or the delivery address, any details you would have to verify that although Stacy said she didn't do the transaction, Stacy indeed did the transaction. Another case is where incorrect amount charged. So you, as a merchant, you'll be required to provide sales receipt to show the correct transaction amount and to verify that indeed the cardholder did this transaction. So, and the sales slip would show whether it's signed or PIN verified or contactless. The cardholder could say, "I went online, I tried to purchase some cement from one of your hardware that is using an e-commerce platform, but the cement not delivered. Or I purchased 10 bags of cement and I paid for 10 and I only received 7. So we need to ensure that we have proof of delivery in the right format as described, and ensure that you have a confirmation signed by the cardholder. And if you have tracking details, you provide that tracking detail as well to say that indeed the item was received by the cardholder and it was received as described, right? And also, it could be a case where a refund. You should have done a refund, and the cardholder is saying, "I did not receive the refund, so I'm raising a dispute on this transaction." As a merchant, we ask that you also ensure that you have confirmation of the refund. And if you did not do a refund to the card, as we know, some merchants give a store credit. Ensure that you have evidence of store credit and any confirmation that the cardholder had accepted the store credit, right? It could also be where the cardholder say, "Okay, I wanted to make the purchase, but I'm no longer making the purchase, so I've canceled the goods or service." But if you're saying, "I've already delivered the service," so Stacy went to the hairdresser and said, "Boy, I never really want this now because I don't like how my style look." But the hairdresser said, "Well, I've already done the service," or the mechanic is saying, "I've already repaired your car," or "I've already delivered the item." So you've utilized the value that you had exchanged, because you'd have used a card and exchanged value on your card for the value of the good or service that the merchant is delivering. So as a merchant, we ask that you share that kind of confirmation to show that that was done. It could also have been where there was a duplicate transaction. If it is that the transaction, although appears duplicate, is actually a legitimate transaction, as a merchant, you need to show that the cardholder actually purchased 2 of the items. So any bills or receipts or any evidence that you have to ensure that the transaction makes sense and you can link the card holder to the transaction, then that would be deemed satisfactory. So after we've gone through these 7 examples, what should you do when the bank comes to you to say, okay, Mr. Merchant or Miss Merchant, your customer, who is a card holder of another bank or a card holder of NCB, has raised a dispute to say that they have not received value. NCB will write you and we'll email you to the email address on file, and we ask that you ensure that your email addresses are current, because once we've sent the communication, it is confirmed as having communicated with you, and you'll be given 7 days in which to reply. We ask that when we send the information to you, you reply with the confirmation with adequate details to show that the transaction was done by your customer, by the card holder. In the absence of such response, then it would mean that the liability would have, or the chargeback would no longer be, the charge will no longer apply to the cardholder's card, but the charge will be applied to your bank account, because your bank account will be debited and the value returned to the card holder. So we ask that you provide confirmation of the transaction, showing items such as date, the amount, reference number, so that we can link the transaction to the customer. All right, let's say we're wrapping up now and you're a little bit tired. What are some of the key points you must note, right? So if you weren't listening, listen keenly right now. Key points you must note: you have 7 days to reply to the copy request. And in non-fraud cases, the customer should always contact the merchant first. So we also ask that you have great relationships with your customer, because that will help you to better manage disputes. They won't necessarily go into their bank that issued the card. They'll have an initial conversation with you as a merchant. So if it is that the chargeback is investigated, there's a research fee that is applied to the card holder if it is deemed that the card holder actually did the transaction. The research fee is $25 US for international cards and $850 for local cards. At the same time, if there's no decision that can be made between the parties and we move it to arbitration, then there's an arbitration fee of $500 US, which is levied on the losing party. So whomever is deemed to be at fault, an arbitration fee of $500. One key thing I'd want to note, is particularly for even e-commerce merchants, participation in 3D Secure does not mean that you won't have chargeback. What it means is that you're protected in some cases such as fraud, but there are many other cases that we mentioned before where the legitimate cardholder could have done a transaction on your site and the transaction was 3D Secure. But for a variety of reasons, they need to raise a chargeback, because it could be item not received or item not received in the correct quality, or they need to cancel the transaction. Also needed to bear these following insights close to mind, right? Provide your customer with all your possible contact details so it's easy for them to reach out to you. Ensure that the currency that is being used to process the transaction is the correct currency. Ensure that if you're doing a sale and the sale is done incorrectly, it's voided. Or in the case of credit cards, the refund is done instantly so that you don't have the card holder raising a refund. If it is that you are out of stock, communicate early with the card holder so that they're not expecting that you're going to deliver within 10 days and 15 days have elapsed and the delivery has not been made, and now they feel the need to make a chargeback. Also, be cautious. Be cautious, because when card holders, like Dane have spoken before, when you're seeing transactions that don't make sense and it's sending up a red flag, and you know it don't make sense, because the first line of defense is really us as human beings and the common sense that we'll execute in our duties. So it's important that we're guided by multiple orders in a short period of time, because it could be that somebody has someone else's card and is attempting to do a transaction which may very well be fraudulent, and that in those cases will result in chargeback. And if it is that there is a transaction that is pending, keep customers informed of what's happening. And if it is that you're not authorized to do manual transactions, do not engage in manual transactions, because there are many other attendant risks involved in those, because you wouldn't even get the validation or authorization to know that it's a seemingly good transaction. And if it is that as a company you have policies that govern how you treat refunds or returns, communicate that well in advance before the cardholder makes a transaction, because you don't want to have that dissonance with your customers, or that creating negative goodwill where they say, boy, I had a terrible experience at your business, so I'll go to your competitors. So we discussed quite a bit, but if you have any questions, feel free to email us at businesssolutions@jncb.com. We're very excited to hear your thoughts and know how we can better serve you so that you can serve your customers. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Gregory. And I will say that lots of responsibility for our merchants here. And at the same time, while we recognize there's lots of responsibility to ensure that their customers are having a safe and enjoyable experience, we also want to have them feeling empowered. And this is what this entire summit has been about. So I have a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
All right. First one is, how can a business owner better manage the risk of getting chargebacks?
All right. Once you're in business, you'll have disputes. Anytime you're doing any sale, you will have disputes. It's just the communication you have with your card holders, employing the best practices that we've shared today, both whether it's on your point of sale or e-commerce, and ensuring that when you're doing a transaction, if you have doubt about the transaction, no sale is better than a bad sale.
Yes, I'm going to take that one away with me. The no sale better than a bad sale. And as someone that has had the bad hairdos, or get back the car and know something else not working and I want back my money, right? How does NCB protect me as a merchant?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we are committed to our merchants, and sessions like this is how we help to protect them by keeping them informed what the rules are. Because once you're operating a space, you need to understand what rules govern that operation.
Absolutely.
What we also do is that we have robust systems in place. I would have mentioned 3D Secure earlier, and you'd have heard about card registration earlier as well. We would have also heard about Contactless, where you have a number of enhancements we've done and we continue to do to have the right system and training in place so that merchants can execute properly. We also have our resource material that we continue to empower merchants so they can know how to operate and how to accept card payments. And when there are disputes, we represent the merchants through the payments associations once the merchant has the details to support them. So we'll be like your attorney, where we say, okay, merchant A has provided evidence and confirmation that Stacy, albeit she never liked the hairdo, she actually had confirmed that she did this transaction. She received the receipt, and the receipt said it was for this item detailing what was done and had a clear description of what was done. So what we ask is, each merchant, help us to help you by ensuring that you have your receipts in order, you have your documents in order, so that when needed, we can call upon you to present these information to the payment association. And a card holder, when a customer comes to you, they have up to 120 days that they can raise a dispute. So it's important that you keep your files in good order in the event that we need to recall upon you so that we can represent you.
Okay, and that actually leads nicely into my next question, which is, it's one question that applies to 3 different areas.
Yes.
Okay, so what do I do when I get a copy request for a transaction done at my POS terminal?
Okay, so wherever the transaction is done, so we have various channels that merchants can use to get in our sales. So if they do it via e-commerce, if they do it via, whether it's our NCB payment buttons, our website template, or they do it via MPOS. One overriding thing you should remember is ensure that you have evidence of the transaction for all the scenarios we went through, so that you can actually substantiate that Stacy, indeed this transaction on this date and time for this amount in this currency for this service or good, and she has confirmed receipt of it.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. You actually answered all the 3 parts in that one answer. So you're ultimately the boss in chargebacks and disputes. So thank you so much, Gregory, for...
Well, the rules govern how we operate.
Okay,
so
good.
We ask that all the merchants be aware of the rules so that we can help them.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Gregory. And we are just really excited that we have now all of these tools and insights to empower us. Again, it always starts with education and awareness. And I feel educated, right? I'm a merchant, I'm a new merchant to this space, but I feel very educated. And I feel as though I'm aware of a lot more things, even for myself as a customer, in terms of how I'm behaving and how my merchants are helping me to be and feel more secure in transacting online. So in closing, I just wanted to share a little bit of insight around a global study done by Experian, which found that 74% of consumers say security is still the most important factor when deciding to engage with a business online. As e-commerce trends upward, the considerations for creating the ultimate digital experience for customers must prioritize the interrelationship between security and convenience. In other words, security cannot be on the back burner. As merchants, you must be prepared to take the necessary steps to ensure that the balance is created and maintained. Digital financial solutions are here to stay, and leveraging them efficiently is the only way, the only means to grow and excel. This brings us to the end of another informative Merchant Fraud Summit. I want to thank our speakers, those that tuned in from Zoom, as well as those who are on stage with me here, for their insightful and engaging presentations. Our technical teams, M1 and Main Events, you, our merchants, for taking the time to be here, to keep informed on the best practices, tools, and solutions for mitigating and managing fraud to ultimately protect your customers. Kudos to you, merchants, for being empowered and taking this step towards more awareness. From your family at NCB, please continue to remain safe and do have yourself a wonderful afternoon.